But let's entertain this for a moment. And I know I did this on a previous stream, but some people may not have seen it. Let's entertain this for a moment. Let's go ahead and go with, okay, let's say that, out of some wild, odd chance, they actually go for a pontificate that reverses, Pope Francis's papacy and what he did. How would that play out? First of all, practically, how is that going to work with the non-Catholics? Aren't the Protestants and the Orthodox and everybody else going to say, see, the papacy is not stable. See, they're reversing what they did previously. See, your James Whites of the world will be like, you see, one day they tell you this, the next day they tell you that. Certainly this will play into the critics' hands, right? But more fundamentally, when you did have cases where a pope reversed the acts of his predecessor, how did that work out well for the Catholic Church? Did it work out well? Or was it a nightmare? I can give you a lot of examples. The one that I've pointed out multiple times, I got a whole stream on it, is the cadaver synod, where one pope digs up the grave and bones of his predecessor, drags his skeleton out, puts the skeleton pope on trial, has a deacon speak on his behalf, because obviously a skeleton can't speak in his own defense. So the deacon spoke on his behalf, put him up on trial, and of course the skeleton pope lost. Of course, he was convicted by the living pope, found guilty. And then the pope reversed all of the acts of his predecessor, of the dead pope. Not only reversed his acts, but reversed his ordinations and said his ordinations weren't valid, which causes a massive problem with the Catholic notion that the sacramental character is an indelible mark. Putting that issue to the side, he said all the people he ordained aren't validly ordained and they need to get reordained. And all of his acts are invalid and we're reversing them. How did that work out well? Was that effective for the Catholic Church? Did that work out? Well, you know the story, right? So the next pope after that pope reversed the stuff that his predecessor did and restored the stuff that his predecessor put into place. And he said, fine, those original ordinations, those are actually valid. And everything the successor did was invalid. And his ordinations need to be redone. And we're restoring the acts of the first pope, the skeleton pope. Story didn't end there. A fourth pope comes along. When the third pope died, fourth pope comes along. What does he do? You know what? We're reversing a reversal of the reversal. And we're going back with what the second pope did when he reversed the first one. And we're going to say that all of the acts of the previous pope are invalid. The acts of the second pope are valid. The acts of the first pope are invalid. All the ordinations of the previous pope are invalid, and we need to redo those. And the ordinations of the first pope are valid, and they don't have to be redone. It was an absolute nightmare. And I'll point out that on the books, the decision that they ended up with is a decision that is contrary to what the Catholic Church teaches on the sacramental character of ordinations. And it also just doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you just look at the situation. But it's like at that point, the popes just said, all right, look, let's just go ahead and end this here and pretend this never happened. And that's why you probably have never heard of it, because the papacy has just said, all right, we're just going to forget this ever happened. And we're just not going to talk about it anymore. The cadaver synod. How did that work out? Did that work out well for the Catholic Church? No, of course not. What about the situation where Leo II at the Sixth Ecumenical Council condemned his predecessor, Pope Anorius, for heresy? That didn't work out well because, first of all, it makes the council look like they're contradicting themselves. Because several sessions prior, that same council that condemned Pope Anorius as teaching heresy was the same council said that all the predecessors of Pope Agatho, which includes Anorius, were free from error in their teaching authority and were infallible in their teaching authority. And yet that same council, several sessions later, says that Anorius actually taught heresy. And it's not that Leo II just said, well, no, he was negligent. Some people try to read Leo II that way. Fair enough, but you have a deeper problem with Hadrian II at the Eighth Ecumenical Council in 869 to 870, who, going back to that case of Anorius, says that Anorius taught heresy. Not that he was just negligent, but that he taught heresy. So when you have popes judging their predecessor popes, accusing them of heresy, first of all, was Honorius actually teaching heresy? No. So we know that the judgment of Leo II and Adrian in the Eighth Ecumenical Council and the Sixth Ecumenical Council were factually wrong. We already know that. That's not controversial. Every historian, every Catholic theologian and historian, they already know that. They already know that the popes and the councils made a mistake on Honorius. How did that work for the Catholic Church in condemning Pope Honorius? Well, to this day, it's something that non-Catholics use to mock Catholicism, to mock papal infallibility, and to mock the magisterium. You got Protestants to this day that will bring up Honorius, Eastern Orthodox to this day that will bring up Honorius, and they'll say, see, you just can't listen to what they say. They can't even make an accurate judgment here. Anorius tells you one thing, and then you got them telling you something else, and then you don't know if you're listening to heresy. And so Honorius tells you one thing, the council says it's heresy. So Pope Francis might have told you something one day about the death penalty. It turns out that will be heretical tomorrow. And so see how that plays into their hands? How well did that work for the Catholic Church in judging predecessors? Not very well. I can go on. We can keep playing this game all day long. The question is, has this just practically been a good endeavor for popes to judge predecessor popes and to say, I'm going to reverse their acts? How well did it work for Pope Francis to reverse Pope Benedict XVI's Summorum Pontificum and his approach to the Latin Mass? How well did that work out for Pope Francis? Didn't that cause problems to this very day? Yeah, it caused problems to this very day. So now people want to see a reversal of the reversal. How well did it work out for the Second Vatican Council to reform and perhaps even reverse some things in the Catholic Church? Some say doctrinally, others say merely disciplinary. How well did that work? Aren't there controversies to this very day? Don't people want to see a reform of the reform? They want to see a reversal of the reversal? Yeah. So when you got people out there, I saw one content creator just moments ago, or actually it was yesterday, do a show, Cardinals reversing Francis' papacy. And he wants to see a pope reverse Pope Francis's papacy. But it's like, first of all, not only will that play into the hands of the critics who will just say, see, the magisterium's unreliable, but how did that work for the Catholic Church previously anyway? Whenever this happened, it never worked out well. Never. Even when popes reverse their own decisions. And yes, you have cases where popes reverse their own decisions. You got that many times, many cases. That never worked out well. It was a huge source of controversy. People are like, wait, what? You're telling us one thing today, something else the next day? And I'm not just talking about Pope Vigilius here. I give you second millennium examples too, but there's one for you, Pope Vigilius. Flip-flopping on the question of the 3 chapters, ends up getting suspended by an ecumenical council. The 5th ecumenical council suspended Pope Vigilius. Some say suspended, some say excommunicated. Either way, they sat in judgment of the Pope, whether legally or illegally they did it, because he was flip-flopping on the question of the 3 chapters. That caused massive controversy, did it not? They had to get that scrubbed from the Acts in order to continue communion between Rome and the Eastern churches. It's never worked out well. Never. So whether you want to see a reversal in a liberal trajectory, or you want to see a reversal in a traditional trajectory, I can show you cases in both instances where it's never really worked out very well. So here's what popes tend to do now. They've picked up on the fact that you can't be so conspicuous as to just outright reverse things. They've picked up on that. So what they tend to do is they silently reverse something. Not by actually saying, well, my predecessor made a mistake. Instead, they'll just basically no longer repeat what their predecessor says, and then they'll just repeat the opposite. They'll promote the opposite and ignore the fact that a predecessor said something to the contrary. That's what they tend to do these days. Pope Francis tipped his hand a little bit more with Traditionis Custodes, but Vatican II tended to kind of silently reverse some things without overtly and explicitly saying, yeah, we're going to reverse Leo the 13th and Gregory the 16th on the relation between the church and state. And it was a lot more, it wasn't as explicit. That's what they tend to do now. What you might see with a future pope is something along those lines. Maybe they'll kind of tone down the trajectory and the direction that Pope Francis brought it in, not with a full reversal, but with kind of, all right, we're just not going to perpetuate the things that Pope Francis said. We'll just kind of silently say, not say anything about that, but we'll maybe just say something that offsets it and hope the issue goes away, and only historians and theologians who know anything about the subject will remember this 100 years from now. That's more likely what will happen. However, even that I don't suspect is going to happen with the next pontificate. The next pontificate, I suspect, is going to be something in the vein of the trajectory of what Pope Francis was going for. I mean, after all, the vast majority of people who are going to elect Pope Francis's successors were appointed cardinals by Pope Francis. And they are not radicals who are going to say, we want to see a reversal of Pope Francis. They're just not. Whether you like that or not, that's the reality. So get out of fantasy land that you find on social media that makes you think you're going to get a Cardinal Sarah who's just going to reverse everything. Again, I already did a whole video on the question of Cardinal Sarah, and is it likely he's going to be elected? Get out of fantasy land. Whether he's the best person for the pontificate or not, it's not going to happen. You want to see it? The people who are voting for the next pope, they're likely not going to vote for it, and I explained why in the previous show. So get out of fantasy land, come back to reality, and face the facts that what you're probably going to have is somebody who's going to be chosen that will carry out what Pope Francis and his trajectory was. Maybe it won't be as much of a media controversy as it was with Pope Francis. Maybe he'll be a little bit better with off-the-cuff statements. Maybe he'll be a little bit better in the way he communicates things. Maybe dicastery documents will be a little better written. And we'll have less ambiguity in them. Maybe, but is it going to be like a full reversal of what Pope Francis said and did? No, of course not. It's not. It's just not going to be. And by the way, Pope Francis wasn't acting out of nowhere. Guess who he was building on? In all of these controversial issues, he was building on John Paul II and Benedict XVI. Whether we're talking about communion for divorce and remarried, whether we are talking about death penalty, he was building on his predecessors, whether you like it or not. He didn't come out of nowhere. This didn't happen in a vacuum. And by the way, John Paul II and Benedict were not operating in a vacuum themselves. They were partially carrying out their understanding of the Second Vatican Council, among other things. So those things didn't happen out of nowhere either.